Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, to the Waynesville-St. Robert Chamber office. A couple of months ago, the Waynesville and St. Robert Chamber decided to participate after someone brought it to our Government and Military Affairs Committee to participate in the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History's bicentennial celebration of the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner. Because of the high level of patriotism that is routinely demonstrated by our local residents, the event will be gathering of as many people in our community and surrounding areas as possible. It is going to be at the Waynesville High School Tiger football field this Saturday at 9 a.m. And we will all join together with other sites all over the United States. However, we are the only site signed up in the whole state of Missouri. We will all sing together the national anthem in order to set a world record for the largest performance of the anthem on the same day. When we started advertising the event, we were surprised when we were contacted by a local resident that has a unique personal family connection to the history of our national anthem. Here to tell you about her connection to the earliest days of the poem that became our national anthem is Waynesville resident Brenda Sands. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to share this story with you all today. I'm just delighted to pass this along. It's not actually my connection. It was my husband's connection and is our family connection. My husband was James Philip Sands, a longtime resident of this area. He was born in 1933. So he was about 19 years older than me, and unfortunately for all of us, he passed away this past March. His childhood, growing up just right on the heels of the Depression, was pretty tough, as we can all imagine. And I think that one of the glowing things in his young life was the fact that the family knew the story that my husband's grandpa's grandpa, Samuel Sands, had set the Star-Spangled Banner to type as a young boy. He was 14 years old. I can imagine my husband as a little boy sitting at his grandpa's knee. He would tell me that his grandpa, who was about 60 years older than he was, had white hair, and they would be confined to out of doors when Grandpa wanted to smoke his pipe. And he said that he would draw on that pipe and let the smoke curl around his head so that James could hardly see his face. But he would sit there and let Grandpa talk to him and tell him family stories and hopefully share wisdom. One of the things that they delighted in telling was that Samuel, at age 14, was an apprentice in a print shop in Baltimore, and that all of the men who were of the right age were gone to fight the War of 1812. Samuel was contacted. Someone brought a handbill to him, and he was the first person to set the Star-Spangled Banner to type. That's the story, and we didn't know a lot of details, by the time I came into James' life. But in about 2008, he and I started doing some research, made a trip to Baltimore to find out more. We had a great time, and we went down a lot of rabbit trails, but we didn't learn a whole lot, not a whole lot more than we already knew. However, a few days, really, after our return back from that trip, I found a relative online who was a gold mine. Her name was Mary Reed Cooper. Her grandpa was Samuel's brother. And she began sending us information and said, "Oh, I have boxes and boxes. I'm going to copy all this stuff and send it to you." The first envelope we got from her, I have to show you. This is how it looks. All of those stamps. And if you look close enough, they're 1-penny stamps. And as soon as I saw it, I said, yeah, she's related to my husband. That's something he would do. So now we had pictures, now we had documentation, now we had so much more. And some of that you have today. One of the family stories that she sent along, I almost hesitate to share with you all because in some ways it's kind of cheesy, you know, but that's kind of how family stories are, I think. It was written by a woman in 1932. So like I said, my husband was born in 33. Maybe some of this story is what he was told as a young boy, but then forgot by the time I came along. I don't know. Anyway, the woman who put it down said that her mother had shared this with her and had said that Samuel lived to be an old man, but that he always felt this was the greatest thing he had ever done. Maybe a little embellishment here. And this is the story. Little Sammy Sands went to school during the day, and at nights he worked in the printing office of the American Advertiser, the paper which afterwards became the American Paper. Sammy was not a printer. He only straightened up the office at night and had everything clean for the next day. One night after the Battle of Fort McHenry, September 13th, 1814, Sammy was in the office with only the head printer. It was late, and all the other men had gone. A poem was brought in. It was by Francis Scott Key, and it was written while he was a prisoner on a British ship off the coast of Fort McHenry on the night of the bombardment. The printer merely glanced at the poem. It was too late to do anything with this tonight, he said. It will have to go over to the next edition. Tomorrow, one of the printers can set this to type. Sammy Sands liked poetry, and he picked up the poem and read it. The boy was immediately inspired by its glorious patriotism and its thrilling beauty, and he begged to be allowed to set the type for it that night so that it could be published in the next edition. The printer told Sammy he did not know anything about setting type, and it was too late. He could not possibly finish it, even if he worked all night. But Sammy Sands knew he held in his hands immortal stanzas and that he must obey the urge he felt to type that poem. And so he pleaded again to be allowed to set the type for the Star-Spangled Banner. The printer finally agreed to let Sammy try it. Sammy was left alone in the office, and he started to set the type. All night he worked, setting the type by hand. Every little while he looked at the clock to see whether he or the daylight would win. Then daybreak dawned, and Sammy Sands had finished his task. Did Sammy Sands truly know the worth of that poem? He lived to hear it sung from one end of our country to the other. The song in whose honor our men bare their heads and our women rise with them when we hear its strains. Okay, very possibly there's an embellishment there, very possibly some key things are stretched to make a good family story. But nonetheless, my husband was impressed as a little kid, and he never lost that joy knowing that story. When we have shared the story with younger generations, which, by the way, together in our blended family, James and I have 6 children, 16 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. And when we share that story, it seems like generations today are not nearly as impressed as he would have been. For one thing, what in the world is setting to type? But, things are done so quickly now and just at the touch of a keystroke. And yet a lot of the greatness, I think, in this story is that here was Samuel, whose father had died when he was 9. His mother and his siblings moved from Annapolis to Baltimore. He did have a love for words. He became an apprentice in the print shop. He went on to be a printer, and this is a book we have of his publications that were united into one book form. He did have a love for journalism all of his life, and he rose up out of what are less than perfect circumstances, as most of us do, and did go on to accomplish things with his life that mattered to him and mattered to the rest of the family, hopefully mattered to his community, his nation. The obituary that was printed about him in the Baltimore Sun had some rather glowing remarks to say about him. And I think what a nice tribute. The important thing I want to say to my family coming after me is, whatever your story is, make sure that you tell it to future generations. Make sure that they know to whom you give honor for the goodness in your life. Make sure that the story lives on and does not die. Make sure that you are living a life that is honorable and does pay tribute to a nation where we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. And we can say things that, we have freedom of speech in this nation.